I used to think my Grandma Aurora was an open book, bound in kindness and filled with stories of simple joys. Her garden bursting with sunflowers, the mischievous cat she rescued from the snow, the quiet evenings spent knitting under the soft glow of a lamp. I believed I knew her heart as well as I knew my own. Those blue eyes, the color of a summer sky after a gentle rain, always held a comforting light, a promise of safety and unconditional love. She was the anchor in our family, the steady presence that weathered every storm. My own mother, her daughter, often sought her counsel, finding solace in Aurora's quiet wisdom. Even my father, a man not easily given to sentiment, held her in the highest regard. To us she was simply Grandma, a source of warmth, laughter, and the most delicious apple pies imaginable. It was only after she passed peacefully in her sleep at the ripe old age of 92 that I began to understand how profoundly wrong I was. We were sorting through her belongings, a task both heartbreaking and necessary, when I found it. Not in plain sight, not among the photographs and crocheted blankets she readily displayed, but hidden away in a dusty wooden box tucked deep within the attic. The attic itself was a forgotten realm, a repository of memories layered like sediment. The air hung thick and heavy with the scent of aged wood, mothballs, and something indefinably old. Sunbeams sliced through cracks in the boarded-up windows, illuminating swirling dust motes that danced like tiny ghosts. I remember coughing, the dryness scratching at my throat, as I navigated through stacks of forgotten furniture draped in white sheets, their shapes ghostly and unfamiliar. The box was small, crafted from dark, richly grained wood. It had no lock, only a simple brass clasp that had tarnished with age. My fingers trembled slightly as I unfastened it. Inside, nestled amongst dried lavender and yellowed lace, lay the diary. It was bound in worn leather, the color of rich earth, its surface softened and cracked with age. The edges of the pages were brittle and browned, and the faint scent of vanilla and old paper wafted up as I lifted it. The ink was faded, a sepia tone that hinted at the passage of decades. It felt strangely warm to the touch, as if it held a life of its own. I sat there on the attic floor, surrounded by the echoes of the past, and opened the diary. The first entry was dated 1942. My breath caught in my throat. 1942. A time of war, of unimaginable hardship. A time I could only imagine through the stories and grainy newsreels that flickered across the television screen. My Grandma Aurora, the woman I thought I knew so well, had lived through that. She had witnessed it, breathed it, lived it. And she had kept this secret, this hidden chronicle of her life, locked away for decades. The handwriting was delicate, almost fragile, yet filled with a determined strength. As I scanned the first few pages, a wave of emotions washed over me. Disbelief, curiosity, and a profound sense of sadness. The Aurora I knew, the gentle, loving grandmother, seemed distant, replaced by a young woman struggling to navigate a world consumed by darkness. The diary spoke of a forbidden love, a love that blossomed amidst the chaos of war, a love that defied societal expectations and threatened to tear her family apart. It spoke of sacrifices, choices made under duress, and the crushing weight of secrets kept. It hinted at a past far more complex and turbulent than anything I could have ever imagined. I learned that Aurora was not merely a bystander during those tumultuous times. She was a vital part of the resistance movement, risking her life daily to protect those she loved and to fight for a better future. She sheltered refugees, smuggled messages, and endured hardships that would have broken a lesser spirit. The diary revealed a woman of extraordinary courage, resilience, and unwavering moral conviction. A woman who had lived a life of quiet heroism, hidden beneath a veneer of domesticity. And as I continued to read, I began to understand why she had kept this part of herself hidden. The secrets she carried were heavy, the memories painful. Perhaps she had believed that by burying the past, she could protect her loved ones from its shadows. Perhaps she had simply wanted to create a life of peace and normalcy after enduring so much hardship. But now the secrets were unearthed. The truth was waiting to be told, and I, her granddaughter, felt a profound responsibility to share her story with the world. This diary is more than just a collection of faded ink and brittle paper. It is a testament to the enduring power of love, the resilience of the human spirit, and the hidden legacies that shape our lives. It is a story of forbidden romance, wartime sacrifice, and a legacy that echoes across generations. It's a story that challenges everything I thought I knew about my family, about my grandmother, and about myself. It's a story that demands to be heard. And so I will share it with you. I will delve into the pages of this hidden diary and unravel the secrets that Grandma Aurora kept hidden for so long. I will follow her footsteps through the shadows of the past and uncover the truth about her life, her loves, and her extraordinary courage. If you'd like to walk this path with me, to discover the hidden depths of Grandma Aurora's heart and the secrets she carried within, then subscribe and stay close. For this is just the beginning of her story, and the beginning of mine. The ink on that first page, though faded, curled around the words like embracing vines. It wasn't just writing. It was a whisper from a time almost lost. A time before the world sharpened its teeth. Before love became a battlefield. Before everything changed. Willow Creek. The name itself tasted of sunshine and slow afternoons. It wasn't a place you found on most maps, nestled as it was in a valley cradled by the Blue Ridge Mountains. The air there hummed with the lazy buzz of bees in the clover fields and the distant, comforting low of cattle. It was a place where time moved differently, measured not in hours but in the ripening of peaches and the changing colors of the leaves. It was the late 1930s, and the world as they knew it in Willow Creek was still a world of front porch swings and firefly evenings. Our farm, a modest patch of land carved from the foothills, was called Havenwood. Not because it was particularly grand, but I suppose because that's what it felt like to Mama and Papa. A refuge. A place to nurture life and love. Papa was a man of the earth, his hands calloused and strong, his face weathered like old leather. He spoke little, but his actions were a constant reassurance. A steady presence like the ancient oak that stood sentinel at the edge of our fields. Mama, on the other hand, was all warmth and song. Her laughter was like wind chimes, and she could coax life from the most barren soil. She was the heart of Havenwood, the sun that nourished us all. I was Aurora then, a girl of 10 with braids the color of ripe wheat and eyes that held the vastness of the summer sky. I spent my days lost in books, hidden beneath the weeping willow by the creek, its branches forming a curtain around my own secret world. Words were my escape, my solace, my rebellion against the quiet predictability of our days. I devoured stories of far-off lands, of daring adventures, of lives lived on a grander scale than the one I seemed destined for. My older brother Thomas was a dreamer too, but his dreams took flight in a different way. He was obsessed with airplanes, spending hours sketching them in his notebooks, his eyes always scanning the sky for a glimpse of a passing biplane. He'd build model planes from scraps of wood and baling wire, launching them into the wind with a fierce determination that both amused and worried Mama. He spoke of becoming a pilot, of soaring above the clouds, of seeing the world from a different perspective. And then there was Lily, my younger sister. She was a fragile, ethereal creature, with a sensitivity that bordered on the otherworldly. She saw beauty in everything, in the dewdrop clinging to a spider's web, in the pattern of veins on a fallen leaf, in the way the moonlight painted silver streaks across the fields. She wrote poetry, filling notebooks with verses that spoke of nature's secrets and the hidden language of the heart. Lily was my confidant, my shadow, the one who understood my unspoken longings. Our days were filled with the rhythm of farm life. We rose before dawn, the air still cool and damp, and helped Papa with the chores, milking the cows, feeding the chickens, gathering eggs. The smell of fresh hay and warm milk filled the air, a comforting aroma that spoke of hard work and honest living. Afternoons were spent in the fields, weeding the rows of corn and beans, the sun beating down on our backs. Evenings were a time for rest and togetherness. We'd gather on the porch, Mama humming a lullaby as she mended our clothes, Papa whittling small wooden toys, Thomas lost in his airplane dreams, Lily scribbling in her notebook, and me, always me, with my nose buried in a book. Supper was always a feast, prepared with Mama's loving hands. Fresh vegetables from the garden, roasted chicken or ham, homemade bread still warm from the oven, and always a pie for dessert. We'd sit around the table, sharing stories and laughter, the kerosene lamp casting a warm glow on our faces. After supper, we'd often sit outside, watching the fireflies dance in the twilight, listening to the crickets chirping their nightly symphony. Sometimes Papa would tell us stories of his own childhood, of growing up on the farm, of the hardships he had faced, and of the enduring power of family. On clear nights we would lie on a blanket in the field, gazing up at the stars. Thomas would point out constellations, naming them with an easy familiarity, while Lily would whisper poems about the moon and the mysteries of the universe. I would simply lie there, lost in the immensity of it all, feeling a strange mixture of awe and longing. It was then, under the vast expanse of the night sky, that I felt most acutely the pull of something beyond Willow Creek, a yearning for a life that was bigger, bolder, more mine. But even in that idyllic setting, there were subtle undercurrents, whispers of a world beyond our valley that was teetering on the brink of something terrible. The radio, a constant presence in our home, crackled with news of unrest in Europe, of rising tensions and ominous threats. Papa would listen with a furrowed brow, his silence speaking volumes. Mama would try to distract us with stories and songs, but even her cheerful facade couldn't completely mask the worry in her eyes. And I felt it too. A sense of unease, a premonition that the peaceful world of Willow Creek, the haven of Havenwood, couldn't last forever. It was a feeling that settled deep in my bones, a quiet dread that shadowed my dreams and colored my waking hours. I knew somehow that the storm was coming, and that it would change everything. The seeds of that knowledge were planted early, watered by my own restless spirit, and a yearning that even I couldn't fully understand. A yearning that whispered of stories waiting to be written, of a life waiting to be lived, beyond the borders of Willow Creek and the safety of Havenwood. A life that, I suspected, would demand more of me than I could ever imagine. That teacher's words, they were a spark, not a condemnation. They ignited something within me, a fierce determination to prove her wrong, to silence the doubts that echoed in my own mind. But even then, as I sat beneath the willow tree, scribbling furiously in my notebook, I knew that writing was more than just a way to prove someone wrong. It was a way to understand the world, to make sense of the chaos, to give voice to the longings of my heart. And perhaps, just perhaps, to find my own place in the grand unfolding story of life. The ink was barely dry on the last page of my little book. A secret world crafted in stolen moments, born from a teacher's dismissive words. I remember holding it, a slim volume bound with twine and filled with my own uneven script, feeling a surge of defiance, a quiet victory. But the world outside my window wasn't listening to my triumphs. It was tuning into a different kind of story, one broadcast in crackling voices from faraway lands, a story of shadows gathering on the horizon. Willow Creek, nestled deep in the valley, had always seemed immune to the troubles of the world. Our days unfolded with the predictable rhythm of the seasons, the scent of apple blossoms in spring, the golden hues of autumn leaves, the quiet hush of winter snow. But even here the whispers started to creep in, carried on the wind like dandelion seeds. It began subtly, a hushed conversation at the general store about events in Europe. My father, usually jovial, would furrow his brow as he listened to the radio, the news reports a grim counterpoint to the cheerful melodies that usually filled the kitchen. My mother, her hands perpetually busy with mending or baking, would pause, her face etched with a worry I hadn't seen before. She'd clutch her rosary beads a little tighter, her prayers laced with a new urgency. Thomas, ever the adventurer, saw the war as a grand escapade, a chance to prove himself. He'd puff out his chest, mimicking the serious tones of the news anchors. "There'll be glory in it, you'll see," he'd declare, his eyes shining with a naive enthusiasm that both worried and irritated me. He saw only the battles, the medals, the heroic tales he devoured in adventure novels. He didn't see the fear in Mama's eyes, the lines deepening around Papa's mouth. He didn't understand that glory came at a terrible price. For Mama and Papa, the war was a looming monster, threatening to devour their children, their livelihood, the peaceful life they had painstakingly built. They had known hardship, survived the depression with grit and ingenuity, but this felt different, larger, a force beyond their control. I remember one evening, Papa sitting at the kitchen table, his head in his hands. Mama stood behind him, her hands resting on his shoulders, her gaze fixed on some distant point beyond the window. The silence in the room was heavy, thick with unspoken fears. And me? I was caught between Thomas's reckless excitement and my parents' quiet dread. The war felt abstract, a distant rumble that didn't quite penetrate the walls of our home. But as the days turned into weeks, and the news grew more dire, a sense of unease began to settle in my bones. The world I knew, the world of Willow Creek, of apple orchards and summer dances, felt fragile, threatened. The carefree dreams I had woven into my little book seemed suddenly frivolous, out of touch with the harsh realities unfolding across the ocean. My longings didn't disappear, but they took on a different hue. The romantic fantasies were still there, but now they were tinged with a sense of urgency, a desperate desire to experience life, love, before the world changed irrevocably. I started paying more attention to the news, trying to understand the forces at play, the stakes involved. I read newspapers cover to cover, trying to decipher the complex political landscape. I felt a growing responsibility, a sense that I could no longer afford to be a passive observer. Then he arrived. It was a sweltering afternoon in late July. The air hung heavy and still, the cicadas buzzing a relentless drone. I was sitting on the porch swing trying to lose myself in a book, when I saw him walking up the dusty road. He was in uniform, but not like the local boys who had enlisted. He carried himself with a quiet dignity, a weary grace that set him apart. His uniform, though clean, seemed worn, as if he had traveled a great distance. He stopped at the gate, his eyes the color of a stormy sea meeting mine. There was a depth to them, a knowledge that belied his youth. He wasn't handsome in the way the boys in town were. His features were sharp, angular, his face marked by shadows that hinted at hardship. But there was something undeniably compelling about him, a quiet strength that drew me in. "Excuse me," he said, his voice low and melodic, with a trace of an accent I couldn't quite place. "I'm looking for the Miller farm." "You found it," I replied, my voice sounding strangely breathy. "I'm Aurora Miller. Can I help you?" He smiled, a fleeting, almost sad smile. "My name is Elias. I was told the Millers might have work for a weary traveler." Papa, hearing voices, came to the door. He studied Elias for a moment, his gaze assessing, cautious. Then he nodded slowly. "We could use an extra pair of hands. Come on in, son. Mama will fix you something to eat." Elias spent the next few weeks working on the farm. He was strong and capable, his hands callous but gentle. He worked in silence, his movements precise and efficient. He never spoke about his past, his family, or why he was so far from home. He was an enigma, a mystery wrapped in a uniform. I found myself drawn to him, captivated by his quiet intensity. We would often work side by side in the fields, weeding the rows of vegetables, harvesting the ripe fruit. We rarely spoke, but I felt a connection between us, a silent understanding that transcended words. His eyes would meet mine and I would feel a jolt, a spark of something unfamiliar and powerful. He was different from the boys I had known, the ones who talked of dances and cars and their future plans. Elias seemed to carry the weight of the world on his shoulders. He had seen things, experienced things that I could only imagine. He had a quiet sadness about him, a sense of detachment that both intrigued and saddened me. One evening, as we were walking back from the fields, the sky ablaze with the colors of sunset, he stopped and turned to me. "Willow Creek is beautiful," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "It reminds me of a place I once knew, a place of peace and innocence. But you don't think it will stay that way, do you?" I asked, my voice trembling slightly. He looked at me, his eyes filled with a deep sorrow. "The world is changing, Aurora. Nothing will ever be the same again." His words hung in the air, heavy with unspoken meaning. I knew in that moment that Elias was more than just a farmhand, more than just a weary traveler. He was a harbinger of change, a sign that the storm clouds gathering on the horizon were about to break. I also knew with a certainty that both thrilled and terrified me, that my life was about to change forever. My quiet dreams, my innocent longings, were about to be swept away by a tide of events beyond my control. And Elias, this mysterious stranger with the haunted eyes, was somehow at the center of it all. There was a secret he carried, a burden he bore in silence. I could see it in the way he flinched at loud noises, the way he sometimes stared into the distance, lost in thoughts I couldn't fathom. I didn't know what it was, but I knew it was dangerous, that it could shatter the fragile peace of Willow Creek and entangle me in a web of peril and intrigue. Yet, despite the fear, despite the uncertainty, I felt a pull towards him, a magnetic force that I couldn't resist. He was a mystery I desperately wanted to solve, a story I was compelled to read. And I knew, with a growing sense of dread and excitement, that my own story was about to be irrevocably intertwined with his. The page had turned, and the next chapter, I sensed, would be filled with shadows, with secrets, and with a love that could bloom even in the darkest of times. The world was at war, and so, it seemed, was my heart. The next morning, after my teacher's stinging words, I did finish my first book. Not a published book, not yet, but a small leather-bound diary, a gift from Papa, tucked away for a special occasion. I started writing in it that very night, pouring out the hurt, the anger, the sudden blooming defiance. It became my confidant, my secret garden where words could blossom without fear of judgment. Now, so many years later, it holds more than just youthful angst. It holds Elias. Our meetings became a carefully woven thread in the tapestry of those uncertain days. We stole moments hidden away in the woods behind the church, the rustling leaves our only witnesses. The air was thick with the scent of pine and damp earth, a stark contrast to the growing unease in the village. He would wait for me, a shadow against the ancient trees, his eyes holding a depth of sadness I was only beginning to understand. We talked at first about simple things, the changing colors of the leaves, the way the birds sang even as war raged in distant lands. But soon the simple things weren't enough. We needed to share the burdens we carried, the fears that gnawed at our souls. One crisp autumn evening, as the sun bled crimson across the horizon, Elias finally confided in me. His voice was low, almost a whisper, as if afraid the trees themselves would betray him. He wasn't just a wanderer, a refugee seeking solace. He was a German scientist, a physicist who had deserted the Nazi regime. He had seen the horrors they were capable of, the twisted ambition that fueled their hunger for power. He told me about a device, a complex encryption machine his mentor had been working on. It was capable of scrambling any message, of making communication unbreakable. The Nazis wanted it, of course. They understood its potential to control the flow of information, to solidify their grip on the world. My mentor, Elias said, his voice catching. He hid it. He knew what they would do with it. He entrusted me with finding it, with keeping it out of their hands. He was caught between two worlds, hunted by both sides. The Germans considered him a traitor, a deserter who had stolen their secrets. The Allies, distrustful of anyone with a German accent, would likely imprison him, or worse. He was alone, utterly alone except for me. And I, foolish, naive Aurora, found myself falling deeper in love with this man who carried the weight of the world on his shoulders. His vulnerability, his quiet courage stirred something within me, a fierce protectiveness I didn't know I possessed. But our secret meetings didn't go unnoticed. The atmosphere in Willow Creek was changing, growing heavy with suspicion. Strangers arrived, their faces hard, their eyes constantly scanning the surroundings. They asked casual questions in the general store, lingered a little too long near the church, their presence a subtle but unmistakable threat. They were wolves in sheep's clothing, Nazi agents infiltrating our peaceful village, searching for something or someone. Fear became a constant companion, a knot in my stomach that tightened with each passing day. I saw the worry etched on Papa's face, the way Mama's hands trembled as she kneaded the dough for bread. Our quiet life, our sense of security was crumbling around us. Elias was growing desperate. He needed to find the artifact to get it to safety before the Nazis discovered its location. He had brought with him a collection of notes, cryptic scribblings left by his mentor, the clockmaker. The old man had been a master of puzzles, of hiding things in plain sight. Elias believed the clues to the artifact's location were hidden within those notes, but he couldn't decipher them. One afternoon, huddled together in the church's dusty library, surrounded by towering stacks of forgotten books, Elias spread the notes out on the table. They were filled with diagrams of clocks, strange symbols, and fragments of poetry. I traced my finger across a particularly intricate drawing of a pendulum, a sudden spark of recognition flickering in my mind. "Elias," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "My grandfather used to repair the church clock. He always said it had a secret compartment, a place where he kept his tools." Elias's eyes widened. He grabbed the drawing, his fingers trembling. The pendulum. The inscription on the back. It matches a verse from Goethe. It's a code. He hid the clue in the clock itself. Together, we raced up the narrow, winding stairs to the bell tower. The clock, a massive, ancient contraption, dominated the space. Elias carefully examined the pendulum, his fingers tracing the faint inscription. He recited the verse from Goethe, his voice filled with a mixture of excitement and trepidation. Beneath the house of God where silence sleeps, a labyrinth awaits, its secrets deep. A labyrinth. The church. There had always been rumors of a hidden network of tunnels beneath the building, a place where the early settlers had sought refuge from Indian raids. But the entrance had been lost for generations. We searched for hours, our hands raw and bleeding, our hopes dwindling with each passing moment. Finally, tucked away behind a loose stone near the altar, we found it. A narrow opening barely wide enough to squeeze through. The air that rushed out was cold and damp, carrying the scent of earth and decay. It was a passage into the unknown, a descent into the heart of the past. As we stood there, poised on the brink of discovery, I felt a profound shift within myself. I was no longer just Aurora, the village girl who dreamed of writing stories. I was a protector, a guardian, a woman willing to risk everything for the man she loved and the truth he sought. But the decision wasn't easy. Protecting Elias meant putting my family, my community, in danger. The Nazis were closing in, their presence a suffocating weight on Willow Creek. Could I justify risking everything for a man I had only just met, for a cause that seemed so distant, so abstract? That night I sat in my room, my diary open before me. The words flowed, a torrent of emotions. Fear, love, doubt, and a growing sense of resolve. I wrote about Elias, about his kindness, his courage, his unwavering commitment to doing what was right. I wrote about my family, about their love, their sacrifices, their unwavering faith in me. And I wrote about myself, about the woman I was becoming, the woman who was no longer afraid to stand up for what she believed in, even if it meant facing unimaginable danger. Dear Diary, I wrote, my hand trembling. I don't know what the future holds. I don't know if we will succeed. But I know that I can't stand by and watch while evil triumphs. I have to fight. I have to protect what I love. And I have to trust that somehow in the end love will prevail. The diary became more than just a confidant. It became my silent witness, my anchor in the storm. It was a place where I could confess my fears, reaffirm my devotion to Elias, and chart the course of my own transformation. It was a testament to the enduring power of love, even in the face of war, and a reminder that even the smallest voice can make a difference in the world. The next morning I was ready to descend into the labyrinth, ready to face whatever dangers awaited us, ready to fight for the man I loved and the future we hoped to build. The journey would be perilous, but with Elias by my side, and the strength of my convictions guiding me, I knew that we could face anything. The last tumblers clicked, a sound that echoed too loudly in the oppressive silence. The heavy stone door, etched with the faded memory of a clockwork mechanism, groaned open. Dust motes danced in the beam of Elias's lamp, revealing a chamber smaller than I'd imagined, a forgotten pocket beneath the weight of centuries. The air hung thick and still, tasting of damp earth and something else, something metallic, ancient. Elias drew a breath, his eyes shining with a triumph that made my heart ache. We found it, Aurora. We really found it. In the center of the chamber, resting on a simple stone pedestal, was the device. It wasn't what I expected. Not a gleaming machine of war, but something delicate. A sphere of intricately woven metal, no bigger than my fist, humming with a low, almost imperceptible vibration. It looked less like a weapon and more like a caged star. Elias moved towards it, his hand outstretched, and I felt a prickle of unease. I couldn't explain it, a cold dread that settled deep in my bones. Elias, wait. He didn't hear me. His fingers brushed against the cool metal, and the humming intensified. A faint blue light pulsed from within the sphere, illuminating his face with an ethereal glow. He looked younger, almost boyish, his eyes filled with wonder. Then the world exploded. Not literally, but that's how it felt. A crash echoed from the passage behind us, followed by guttural shouts and the unmistakable sound of jackboots on stone. The Nazis. They'd followed us. Elias whirled around, shoving me behind him. Aurora, run. Get out of here. I wanted to argue, to fight, but I saw the determination in his eyes, the grim set of his jaw. He knew. He knew this was the end. The first Nazi soldier burst into the chamber, his Luger raised. Elias lunged, knocking the gun aside, and they grappled, a desperate dance of survival in the cramped space. I scrambled back, my heart hammering against my ribs, searching for a way out. My mind raced, trying to recall the clockmaker's intricate designs, the hidden passages, the false walls. Another soldier appeared, then another. They were closing in, their faces contorted with hatred. Elias fought with a ferocity I'd never seen, but he was outnumbered, outgunned. "Aurora, the passage. The one by the altar," he yelled, his voice strained. I knew the one he meant. A narrow opening concealed behind a crumbling section of the wall. I pushed against the stones, my fingers scrabbling for purchase, and a section gave way, revealing a dark, narrow tunnel. "Go! Now!" Elias roared, taking a bullet in the shoulder. He didn't cry out, but the pain was evident in the tightening of his features. I hesitated, tears streaming down my face. I couldn't leave him. Not like this. He saw my hesitation and his eyes softened, a flicker of the old Elias shining through the pain. "Aurora, please. This is bigger than us. You have to do this. Take it." He gestured towards the sphere, still humming on the pedestal. "But, no buts," he said, his voice firm. "Take it and remember me. Remember what we fought for." He reached out, his hand bloody, and gently pressed the sphere into my palm. It was warm, almost alive, pulsing with energy. I clutched it tight, as if holding onto a piece of him. "I love you, Aurora," he whispered, his voice barely audible above the sounds of the struggle. Those were the last words I ever heard him speak. I turned and fled into the darkness, the image of Elias's face seared into my memory. The passage was narrow and claustrophobic, the air thick with the smell of damp earth and decay. I stumbled blindly, my hands scraping against the rough stone walls, the sphere a burning weight in my hand. Behind me, the sounds of the battle raged on, punctuated by gunshots and shouts. Then silence. A silence so profound it was almost unbearable. I didn't stop running until I reached the other side of the passage, emerging into the overgrown churchyard, the cold night air stinging my lungs. I collapsed against a crumbling headstone, my body shaking with sobs. He was gone. Elias was gone. The sphere pulsed in my hand, a constant reminder of what I had lost, of what I now carried. Not just a device but a legacy, a responsibility. I stayed there for hours, huddled in the darkness, the cold seeping into my bones. The grief was a physical weight, crushing me beneath its immensity. I wanted to scream, to rage, to tear the world apart. But I couldn't. I had a mission now. Purpose. As the first rays of dawn painted the sky, I knew I couldn't stay there. I had to move, to hide, to protect what Elias had entrusted to me. That morning I started this diary. Not as a record of events but as a conversation with him. A way to keep him alive, to share my thoughts, my fears, my hopes. A way to understand what had happened, and what I was supposed to do next. The first entry was simple, barely legible through my tears. "Elias, they're gone. You're gone. I don't know what to do." But as I wrote, a strange thing happened. The words began to flow, pouring out of me like a dam had broken. Memories, thoughts, ideas, all swirling together, taking shape on the page. It was as if Elias was speaking through me, guiding my hand, whispering encouragement in my ear. I wrote about our first meeting, about the stolen glances and whispered conversations. I wrote about his passion for clocks, his unwavering belief in justice, his infectious laughter. I wrote about the fear and the hope, the love and the loss. And as I wrote, I began to understand. Elias hadn't just given me a device. He had given me a purpose, a reason to keep fighting, even when all seemed lost. The teacher who had said I'd never be a writer, he was wrong. I was a writer now, not by choice but by necessity. My words were my weapons, my shield, my connection to the man I had loved and lost. This diary became my lifeline, my confidant, my silent witness to the unfolding drama of my life. And in its pages I found the strength to carry on, to honor Elias's memory, and to fulfill the mission he had entrusted to me. I didn't know then how long it would take, what sacrifices I would have to make, or what price I would have to pay. But I knew with a certainty that burned brighter than any fear, that I would not let him down. His sacrifice would not be in vain. Shoes scraped against stone, the echo swallowed by the labyrinth's maw behind me. Each breath hitched, a ragged bird trapped in my chest. I didn't run, not exactly. I stumbled, propelled by a primal urge to escape the suffocating darkness that had become Elias's tomb. The artifact, cold and smooth, pressed against my ribs beneath my torn shirt, a constant, agonizing reminder. The mouth of the labyrinth spat me out into the pre-dawn air. The world was still muted, painted in shades of gray, but it was light, real, alive. Elias wasn't home. I walked the familiar path, each step a betrayal of the promise I'd made him. To protect it. To protect him. The lie formed unbidden on my tongue. A shield. The house was quiet when I slipped inside. My mother's gentle snores drifted from her room. I avoided the mirror in the hallway, knowing the stranger staring back would be a grotesque caricature of myself. Bruises bloomed on my skin, mirroring the ones blooming inside. I found the diary hidden beneath the floorboards of my room, exactly where I'd left it. The leather felt alien in my trembling hands. I sat on the edge of the bed, the silence in the room a physical weight. I didn't open it. Not yet. The official story was simple. Elias, bless his adventurous heart, had been exploring some old caves, a tragic accident. A rockslide. Quick, they said. Painless, they hoped. Lies, all of them. Lies I couldn't refute. The funeral was a blur of forced smiles, sympathetic platitudes, and the suffocating weight of unspoken truths. My family saw my grief, but they couldn't see the chasm that had opened inside me. The vast empty space where Elias had been. They couldn't know the secret I carried, the burden that would forever separate me from them. I kept to myself, retreating into the familiar comfort of my room. I ate little, slept less. The world felt muted, distant. My own voice sounded foreign, a stranger's imitation. I flinched at the sound of my name, each syllable a sharp reminder of the life I'd lost, the life we'd planned. Days bled into weeks. The diary remained unopened. It sat on my bedside table, a silent judge, a constant accusation. Finally, one night, unable to bear the silence any longer, I reached for it. The pages were blank, waiting. I picked up a pen, the familiar weight grounding me. My hand trembled as I wrote, the words clumsy, disjointed, a raw outpouring of grief and rage. Not poetry, but screams etched in ink. Asterisk, he's gone. He's really gone. Asterisk, it should have been me. Asterisk, they lied. They all lied. Asterisk, the artifact throbbed faintly beneath my shirt, a cold pulse against my skin. I pressed my hand against it, seeking some connection, some solace. There was nothing. Only the cold, hard reality of its presence and the agonizing absence of Elias. I started to notice things. Shadows that lingered a moment too long. Whispers that seemed to fade just as I turned my head. A sense of being watched, of being tested. The world had shifted. The familiar landscape was now laced with unseen dangers, hidden currents. I saw my family differently too. Their well-meaning attempts to comfort me felt like intrusions, their words hollow and meaningless. I resented their ignorance, their blissful oblivion. They didn't know the truth. They couldn't. One afternoon, while rummaging through Elias's old things, I found a small leather-bound notebook hidden inside a hollowed-out book. It was filled with his meticulous handwriting, sketches of symbols and cryptic notes. I recognized some of the places he had written about, places we had gone together as children, and places we had dreamed of exploring. A page fell open to a drawing of the labyrinth, a crude but accurate representation. Scrawled beneath it was a single word. Custodian. Custodian. The word resonated within me, a faint echo of purpose in the vast emptiness of my grief. What did it mean? What was Elias trying to tell me? That night I couldn't sleep. I crept out of bed and went to the local library. The librarian, a kind, elderly woman with a fondness for Elias, greeted me with a sad smile. I asked her about ancient symbols, about labyrinths, about anything that might shed light on Elias's research. She led me to a dusty corner of the library, a forgotten repository of forgotten knowledge. I spent hours poring over ancient texts, my eyes scanning the faded pages, searching for a clue, a connection, anything to bring me closer to Elias, to understand his sacrifice. I found it in a book on ancient mythology, a reference to a lineage of protectors, individuals chosen to safeguard powerful artifacts, to stand against the forces of darkness. Custodians. The word burned in my mind. It wasn't a coincidence. Elias had known. He had chosen me. Back in my room, I opened the diary again. This time the words came easier, clearer. Not just grief but a nascent resolve. I wrote about the notebook, about the library, about the word custodian. I wrote about my fear, my doubt, but also about the flicker of hope that had begun to ignite within me. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know if I can do this, but I have to try. For Elias. The artifact pulsed again, a slow, steady beat. Felt different. Less cold, less alien. Almost warm. I knew then that I couldn't hide anymore. I couldn't retreat into my grief. I had a purpose, a responsibility. Elias had entrusted me with something precious, something dangerous. And I wouldn't let him down. The next morning, I woke up with a newfound sense of clarity. The grief was still there, a dull ache in my chest, but it was no longer all-consuming. I had a task, a path to follow. I went to Elias's room, a space I had avoided since his death. Dust motes danced in the sunlight streaming through the window. His maps were still pinned to the wall, his notes scattered across his desk. I picked up one of the maps, tracing the familiar lines with my finger. I would start here. I would follow his footsteps, decipher his notes, unravel the mysteries he had left behind. I would become the custodian he believed I could be. I was still grieving. I was still broken. But I was no longer adrift. I had a purpose, and that, I realized, was the first step. The first step on a long, dangerous road. A road I would walk alone. At least for now. The next morning, after that teacher's cruel pronouncement, I didn't write a book, not precisely. I wrote a goodbye note to Willow Creek. It wasn't a dramatic farewell, just a quiet acknowledgement that the girl who belonged there was gone, buried alongside Elias. The Aurora who remained needed space to breathe, space to learn, and most importantly, space to hide. Leaving felt like tearing a thread from the very fabric of my being. Every cobblestone street, every familiar face, held a memory of shared laughter, of stolen kisses under the willow tree, of a life that was supposed to be. But those memories, beautiful as they were now laced with a sharp, persistent pain. Staying meant living in a perpetual echo of what I had lost. I chose a city far enough away that no one would recognize the heartbroken girl from Willow Creek, yet close enough that I could still feel the pull of the familiar stars overhead. It was a city that breathed anonymity, a place where I could disappear into the throngs of people and the labyrinthine streets. My new home was a small, unassuming room above a bakery, the scent of warm bread a constant, comforting presence. It wasn't much, but it was safe, a sanctuary from the prying eyes and whispered questions I feared. The first few weeks were a blur of settling in, of establishing a routine that felt both alien and necessary. I found a job at a small lending library, a haven of quiet and knowledge. Surrounded by books, I felt a flicker of the old Aurora, the one who loved to lose herself in stories. But this time my reading was different. It wasn't about escaping. It was about equipping myself for a battle I didn't fully understand. Elias's diary became my constant companion. His elegant script, filled with technical jargon and cryptic diagrams, was both a source of comfort and a daunting challenge. I spent hours deciphering his notes, cross-referencing them with books on cryptography, mathematics, and even rudimentary electronics. The library became my classroom, the librarians my unwitting tutors. They probably thought I was just a curious young woman, eager to learn. They had no idea the weight of the secret I carried, the urgency that fueled my relentless pursuit of knowledge. I discovered that the artifact wasn't just a sophisticated encryption device, as Elias had initially believed. It was something far more powerful, a tool capable of analyzing and interpreting complex data with astonishing speed. In essence, it was an early form of artificial intelligence, a thinking machine capable of deciphering enemy codes, predicting their movements, and even identifying patterns in their communication. It was a game changer, a weapon that could potentially turn the tide of the war. But its power came with a heavy price. The Nazis were desperate to get their hands on it, and I knew they wouldn't hesitate to use any means necessary to achieve their goal. I had to protect it, not just for Elias but for the countless lives that could be saved by its capabilities. So I began to train myself. I learned to observe, to listen, to blend in. I studied the art of disguise, changing my appearance with simple alterations to my hair, clothing, and even my posture. I practiced memorizing faces, recognizing subtle cues in body language, and anticipating potential threats. The city became my training ground. I spent hours wandering the bustling streets, observing the flow of people, identifying potential surveillance points, and learning to navigate the shadows. I frequented cafes and markets, eavesdropping on conversations, piecing together fragments of information, and honing my ability to gather intelligence without drawing attention to myself. One evening, while sitting in a crowded cafe, I overheard two men speaking in hushed tones. Their conversation was peppered with coded language and references to shipments and deliveries. My instincts screamed that something was amiss. I discreetly followed them as they left the cafe, keeping a safe distance, my heart pounding in my chest. They led me to a warehouse on the outskirts of the city, where I witnessed them unloading crates marked with Nazi symbols. The adrenaline surged through me. I knew I had stumbled upon something significant. I needed to report it, but I couldn't risk going to the authorities. I had no idea who I could trust. Instead, I spent the next few days meticulously documenting the activity at the warehouse, recording license plate numbers, identifying faces, and analyzing the patterns of deliveries. Using the artifact, I was able to decipher some of the coded messages I had overheard, revealing a network of Nazi sympathizers operating within the city. The weight of this knowledge was immense. I felt a growing sense of responsibility, a burning desire to do something to stop them. But I also knew that I was just one person, a young woman with no formal training, facing a powerful and ruthless enemy. The loneliness was the hardest part. I missed Elias's laughter, his gentle touch, the way he always knew how to make me feel safe. I missed my friends, my family, the familiar comfort of Willow Creek. But I couldn't afford to dwell on the past. I had a mission, a purpose that drove me forward, even when I felt like giving up. There were moments when I caught glimpses of myself in the mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. The carefree girl from Willow Creek was gone, replaced by someone harder, more guarded, more determined. My eyes held a new intensity, a quiet strength that I didn't know I possessed. One afternoon, while browsing through a used bookstore, I noticed a man watching me. He was tall and imposing, with a cold, calculating gaze that sent a shiver down my spine. He wore a dark coat and a hat that obscured his face, but I could see the glint of a silver ring on his finger, a ring I had seen in one of Elias's research files, a symbol used by a high-ranking Nazi officer. My heart leaped into my throat. I knew he was after me, after the artifact. I had to get out of there. I quickly paid for my book and slipped out of the store, trying to appear nonchalant. But I could feel his eyes on me, tracking my every move. I ducked into a crowded market, weaving through the throngs of people, trying to lose him in the chaos. I glanced back and saw him pushing his way through the crowd, his face grim, his eyes fixed on me. I knew I couldn't outrun him. I had to be smarter. I spotted a narrow alleyway between two buildings. I darted into it, hoping to find a way out. But the alley was a dead end, a brick wall blocking my path. I was trapped. I turned to face him, my heart pounding in my chest. He stepped into the alleyway, his face now fully visible, his eyes filled with a chilling determination. "Aurora," he said, his voice low and menacing. "We've been looking for you." I knew this was it. This was the moment I had been dreading. But I also knew that I wouldn't give up without a fight. I had come too far, sacrificed too much. I had to protect the artifact no matter the cost. "You'll never get it," I said, my voice trembling but firm. "I'll die before I let you have it." He smiled, a cruel, predatory smile that sent a shiver down my spine. "We'll see about that," he said, reaching into his coat. But as he reached for his weapon, I saw something that gave me a sliver of hope. A glint of sunlight reflecting off a window across the street, illuminating a figure watching us from above. A figure I recognized. It was one of the librarians from the lending library, the quiet, unassuming woman who always seemed to know exactly which books I needed. She held a small metallic object in her hand, pointed directly at the Nazi officer. And then everything went black. Not for me, not yet. But for him. The librarian, it seemed, was more than just a keeper of books. And I was about to learn that my solitary journey was perhaps not so solitary after all. The world, I was beginning to understand, was full of hidden allies, of silent protectors, all fighting their own battles against the encroaching darkness. And maybe, just maybe, I wasn't as alone as I thought I was. The morning after Mr. Harrison, with his perpetually ink-stained fingers and pronouncements of my literary doom, uttered those fateful words, "You'll never be a writer." I sat, not defeated but strangely invigorated. It was as if his doubt had ignited a tiny defiant flame within me. I finished my first short story that very morning, a clumsy, heartfelt thing about a lonely scarecrow who befriends a flock of migrating geese. It was terrible probably, but it was mine. Grandma Aurora would have smiled at that story. She understood the quiet desperation of lonely things finding solace in unexpected connections. She, after all, had lived a life woven with the threads of secrecy, love, and sacrifice. A life I was only beginning to understand through the faded ink of her diary. The diary entries following Elias's death were sparse, filled with a quiet, almost unbearable grief. But beneath the pain, a steely resolve emerged. Aurora channeled her sorrow into purpose. The artifact, the beautiful cursed music box Elias had gifted her, became her weapon. She learned to use it not as a toy but as a conduit. The frequencies, the subtle vibrations it emitted, allowed her to intercept enemy communications, to decipher coded messages, to become a silent, unseen guardian angel for the Allied forces. She worked tirelessly, often through sleepless nights, the rhythmic ticking of the music box her only companion. The attic, once a haven of childhood dreams, transformed into a clandestine hub of wartime intelligence. Each intercepted message, each piece of information relayed was a victory, a small act of defiance against the darkness that threatened to engulf the world. I remember asking her once, long after the war, if she was ever afraid. She had been tending her roses, her hands gnarled and stained with earth, her eyes crinkling at the corners. She paused, her gaze drifting towards the distant hills. "Fear is a constant companion in times like that, child," she said, her voice soft but firm. "But love is stronger. Love for Elias, love for my country, love for the hope of a better future. That love gave me the courage to keep going." Her contribution was subtle, unsung. She never sought recognition, never spoke of her accomplishments. But the diary revealed the truth. It detailed instances where her timely warnings averted ambushes, where her deciphered codes exposed enemy supply lines, where her insights influenced strategic decisions that ultimately saved countless lives. There was one entry in particular that stood out. It described a crucial battle, a turning point in the war. The Allied forces were facing insurmountable odds, their morale dwindling, their supplies running low. Aurora, through the music box, intercepted a message revealing the enemy's planned offensive, a devastating assault that would have crushed the Allied resistance. She relayed the information, knowing the risks involved. If she were discovered, the consequences would be dire not just for her, but for the entire network of resistance fighters. But she couldn't stand idly by, not when so much was at stake. The Allied forces, armed with Aurora's intelligence, were able to prepare a counteroffensive. They ambushed the enemy, turning the tide of the battle and securing a vital victory. That victory, the diary revealed, was directly attributed to Aurora's courage and her mastery of the music box. The war dragged on, each day a relentless struggle against the encroaching darkness. But with each passing victory, hope flickered brighter. And then finally it was over. I can only imagine the relief that washed over Aurora when the news of the armistice arrived. The exhaustion, the bittersweet joy, the profound sense of accomplishment mixed with the lingering sorrow for all that had been lost. The diary entry from that day was short, almost anticlimactic. "It is done," she wrote. "Elias, your sacrifice was not in vain. We have won. But the healing will take a lifetime." And heal she did. She didn't return to the life she had known before the war. The world had changed and so had she. Instead, she chose a simpler path, a life dedicated to helping others. She moved back to Willow Creek, to the small cottage nestled beside the whispering willows. She transformed the cottage into a haven for those affected by the war, veterans struggling with PTSD, orphan children, displaced families. She taught them, comforted them, nurtured them back to health. She used her skills not to decipher codes, but to decipher the human heart. She listened to their stories, their fears, their hopes. She offered them solace, guidance, and a sense of belonging. She became a pillar of the community, a beacon of hope in a world still scarred by conflict. The attic, once a secret headquarters, became a classroom, filled with the laughter of children and the quiet murmur of conversation. The music box, no longer a weapon, became a cherished relic, a reminder of her past and a testament to her love for Elias. She kept it carefully stored inside a beautifully carved wooden box, a box she had received from Elias, lined with velvet, the same shade as the sky on the day they met. It rested on a small table in her living room, a silent sentinel guarding her memories. She never forgot Elias. His memory lived on in her heart, in her actions, in the love she shared with others. And as the years passed, the sharp edges of her grief softened, replaced by a quiet acceptance and a deep sense of peace. I remember visiting her often as a child. I would sit at her feet, listening to her stories not of war and espionage, but of simpler things, of wildflowers blooming in the meadow, of birds singing in the trees, of the magic of a summer rain. She never revealed the full extent of her wartime activities. She didn't want to burden me with the weight of her past. But I could sense it, the strength, the resilience, the quiet courage that lay beneath her gentle exterior. She taught me the importance of kindness, of compassion, of standing up for what is right, even when it's difficult. She taught me the power of love, the enduring strength of the human spirit. And she taught me, perhaps unintentionally, the power of words. She encouraged my writing, not with grand pronouncements or critical assessments, but with gentle encouragement and unwavering belief. She saw something in me, something that Mr. Harrison had failed to see. Now, holding her diary in my hands, I finally understand the full depth of her extraordinary life. I understand the sacrifices she made, the burden she carried, the love that sustained her. She wasn't just a grandmother. She was a warrior, a spy, a healer, a survivor. She was a testament to the resilience of the human spirit, a living embodiment of hope in the face of despair. And she was, without a doubt, the most extraordinary woman I have ever known. The diary, with its faded ink and fragile pages, is more than just a record of her past. It's a legacy, a testament to her love, her courage, and her unwavering commitment to making the world a better place. It's a story that proves even the quietest voices can change the course of history, and that even a teacher's doubt can be a catalyst for a young writer's first, defiant, and ultimately meaningful story. The story of Grandma Aurora, the woman who taught me that true strength lies not in grand pronouncements, but in quiet acts of love and sacrifice. And that, I realized, is a story worth telling. The ink had dried on the last page of my manuscript, a palpable silence settling around me, broken only by the rhythmic tick of the grandfather clock in the hall. My teacher's words, once a sting, now echoed as a distant hum, a testament to the quiet rebellion that had bloomed within me over the past weeks. I had finished my book, yes, but more importantly, I had finished reading Aurora's. The diary lay open on my desk, its worn leather a comforting weight beneath my fingertips. It wasn't just a collection of words anymore. It was a map meticulously drawn, charting the landscape of my grandmother's soul. I had always seen Aurora as a figure etched in sepia tones, a gentle presence offering cookies and whispered stories. But the diary had painted her in vibrant hues, revealing a woman of fierce courage, quiet determination, and a love so profound it had rippled through generations, reaching even me. I picked up the diary, tracing the delicate script with my finger. Each entry was a breadcrumb, leading me deeper into the forest of her life. I remembered the fairy tales she used to tell me, spun from thin air, filled with brave princesses and cunning wolves. As a child, I'd listened, enthralled by the magic. Now I understood. The princesses weren't just characters in a story. They were Aurora herself, navigating a world that often felt cruel and unforgiving. The wolves weren't just villains. They were the hardships she faced, the obstacles she overcame with unwavering grace. The stories she told weren't escapism. They were encoded lessons, wisdom passed down in a language a child could understand. She had taught me about resilience without ever using the word, about kindness without ever demanding it, about the power of hope even in the darkest of times. And I, in my childish naivete, had simply absorbed it all, unknowingly building a foundation of strength that would sustain me in the years to come. Aurora's legacy wasn't locked away in a hidden vault or manifested in some grand sweeping gesture. It was woven into the fabric of our family, a delicate thread of love and resilience that connected us through time. It was in the way my mother always knew how to soothe a crying child, in the way my father approached challenges with unwavering optimism, in the way I, despite my teacher's discouraging words, had found the courage to write. The diary revealed the woman behind the grandmother, the woman who had faced her own demons, who had known heartache and loss, who had nevertheless chosen to embrace life with open arms. I had always perceived her as a fixed point, a constant in my ever-changing world. But the diary showed me that she too had been on a journey, a winding path filled with unexpected turns and breathtaking vistas. And on that path she had collected not treasures of gold, but treasures of the heart, love, compassion, and an unyielding belief in the human spirit. I remembered one entry in particular, written during a time of immense hardship. Aurora had described feeling lost and alone, adrift in a sea of uncertainty. Yet, even in her despair, she had found a glimmer of hope, clinging to the belief that even the darkest night eventually gives way to dawn. She had written about the importance of finding beauty in the mundane, of appreciating the small joys that life offered, of finding strength in the bonds of family and friendship. Reading those words, I felt a profound sense of connection to her, a recognition of the shared human experience that transcended generations. I too had felt lost at times, adrift in my own sea of uncertainty. I too had struggled to find beauty in the mundane, to appreciate the small joys, to find strength in the face of adversity. And in that moment, I realized that Aurora's story wasn't just her story. It was our story, a story of resilience and hope that resonated across time and space. The parallels between her struggles and my own became startlingly clear. Her quiet defiance in a world that sought to silence her mirrored my own determination to write, despite the doubts of others. Her unwavering belief in the power of love mirrored my own desire to connect with others through my words. Her ability to find beauty in the face of hardship mirrored my own attempts to find meaning in a world that often felt chaotic and unpredictable. The diary wasn't just a chronicle of her life. It was a mirror, reflecting back to me my own strengths and weaknesses, my own hopes and fears. It was a reminder that we are all connected, bound together by the invisible threads of love, loss, and the shared human experience. As I sat there bathed in the soft glow of the lamp, a wave of emotion washed over me. It wasn't sadness but something deeper, something more profound. It was a sense of peace, of closure, of understanding. I understood Aurora not just as my grandmother, but as a woman, a warrior, a survivor. I understood her sacrifices, her struggles, her unwavering love. And I understood the true meaning of her legacy. It wasn't about secrets or hidden treasures. It was about the quiet strength she had possessed, the wisdom she had shared through her stories, the unconditional love she had given so freely. It was about the richness and complexity of a life well lived, a life that had touched countless others and left an indelible mark on the world. I closed the diary, holding it close to my chest. It was more than just a book. It was a piece of her, a tangible reminder of her love and her wisdom. It was a guide, a compass, a source of strength and inspiration. And as I held it, I felt a renewed sense of purpose, a desire to honor her memory by living my own life with the same courage, compassion, and unwavering spirit that she had shown. I knew that the journey of uncovering her story had changed me, had reshaped my understanding of myself and the world around me. I had come to see that life wasn't just a series of events, but a tapestry woven from countless threads of joy, sorrow, love, and loss. And that each thread, no matter how small or insignificant it may seem, played a vital role in creating the overall masterpiece. And I knew that the most important stories were often the ones that went untold, the hidden narratives that lay buried beneath the surface of our lives. The stories of our grandmothers, our mothers, our fathers, our friends, our neighbors. The stories of ordinary people who had lived extraordinary lives. These were the stories that deserved to be told, the stories that could inspire us, teach us, and connect us to something larger than ourselves. Because in the end, it's not the grand gestures or the sweeping pronouncements that truly matter. It's the small acts of kindness, the quiet moments of connection, the unwavering belief in the power of the human spirit that make all the difference. And Aurora, in her quiet, unassuming way, had embodied all of those things. She had shown me that even the smallest voice can be heard, that even the most ordinary life can be extraordinary, and that even the darkest night can give way to dawn. The diary, now resting safely on my bedside table, served as a constant reminder of that. A reminder to listen to the whispers of the past, to honor the stories of those who came before us, and to embrace the beauty and complexity of the present. A reminder to be brave, to be kind, and to never give up hope. My teacher may have doubted my ability to write, but Aurora never did. She believed in me even when I didn't believe in myself. And in the end, it was her belief, her love, and her wisdom that had given me the courage to find my voice and tell my story. And for that, I would be forever grateful. The next morning, I didn't just feel like a writer. I felt like a keeper of stories, a conduit for voices that deserved to be heard. And I knew with a certainty that resonated deep within my soul, that Aurora's story, and all the stories that followed, would continue to inspire me, guide me, and shape me for the rest of my days. The diary was more than just a book. It was a legacy, a gift, a timeless reminder of the enduring power of love, courage, and wisdom passed down through generations. And I, her granddaughter, was ready to carry that legacy forward. My teacher said, "You'll never be a writer." The next morning, I finished my first book. And so, my dears, we arrive at the end of Aurora's story. A story woven with threads of resilience, sacrifice, and a love that echoed through generations. A story whispered from the heart of a grandmother to you, her extended family of listeners. Aurora's life, like a field of wildflowers kissed by both sun and storm, bloomed with an unexpected beauty, a testament to the strength that resides within us, often hidden until the winds of adversity begin to blow. Her diary, a silent confidant, held the secrets of a life lived fully, a life that defied expectations and embraced the unexpected twists and turns. It was a life that taught me, and I hope it has taught you, that even in the face of seemingly insurmountable obstacles, the human spirit can soar, can find solace in connection, and can leave behind a legacy of love that transcends time. Aurora's story, you see, wasn't just about her. It was about all of us. It was about the hidden strength we all possess, the quiet courage that allows us to navigate the complexities of life, the unwavering love that binds us together. It was about the importance of remembering, of cherishing the stories of those who came before us, for within those stories lie the keys to understanding ourselves and the world around us. If Aurora's story has touched your heart, if it has resonated with your own experiences, then it has served its purpose. Stories like hers, stories of ordinary people living extraordinary lives, are not meant to be simply heard and forgotten. They are meant to be shared, discussed, and pondered upon. They are meant to ignite a spark within us, a spark of empathy, of understanding, of a desire to connect with others on a deeper level. Think of the stories that have shaped you, the narratives that have guided your choices and influenced your beliefs. Think of the people who have shared those stories with you, the voices that have whispered wisdom and encouragement into your ear. These stories, these voices, are the threads that connect us to the past, the present, and the future. They are the foundation upon which we build our lives, the compass that guides us through the uncharted waters of existence. Aurora's story is now part of that collective narrative, a small but significant contribution to the vast tapestry of human experience. It is a story of hope, of resilience, of the enduring power of love. It is a story that reminds us that even in the darkest of times, there is always light to be found, always beauty to be discovered, always a reason to keep going. Remember the quiet strength she displayed when facing societal disapproval, the unwavering love she poured into her unconventional family, the dedication to her art that served as both solace and expression. These are not just details of a life lived. They are lessons to be learned, examples to be followed. And so, my dears, as we draw this chapter to a close, I invite you to carry Aurora's legacy forward. Share her story with your loved ones, discuss it with your friends, reflect upon it in your own quiet moments. Let her life be a reminder that every single one of us has the power to make a difference, to leave a positive impact on the world, no matter how small or insignificant we may feel. If Aurora's journey resonated with you, if her resilience inspired you, please leave a little token of appreciation. A simple gesture, a click of a button, can help us share her story with an even wider audience, ensuring that her voice continues to be heard, her legacy continues to inspire. A like, as they call it, is a small act, but it speaks volumes. It tells us that her story mattered, that her life had meaning, that her voice will not be silenced. And if you've enjoyed hearing Aurora's tale, and would like to hear more stories of courageous women and resilient spirits, please consider subscribing to our channel. We are dedicated to bringing you stories that uplift, inspire, and connect us to the shared human experience. Your subscription helps us continue our work, allowing us to uncover and share more hidden gems, more untold stories that deserve to be heard. But most importantly, I want to hear from you. What resonated most deeply with you in Aurora's story? What lessons did you learn from her life? What moments touched your heart? Please, share your thoughts in the comments below. Your insights, your reflections, your personal experiences are invaluable. They enrich the conversation, deepen our understanding, and create a sense of community among us all. The comments section is a space for us to connect, to share, to support one another. It is a place where we can celebrate the power of storytelling and the beauty of the human spirit. So please don't be shy. Share your thoughts, your feelings, your reactions. Let your voice be heard. Think about the secrets whispered between the lines of her diary, the unspoken hopes and fears that she confided to its pages. What secret do you believe Grandma Aurora held closest to her heart? Was it the secret of her artistic passion, hidden away for so long? Was it the secret of her unconventional love, a love that defied societal expectations? Or was it the secret of her unwavering resilience, the inner strength that allowed her to overcome adversity and emerge stronger than ever? Perhaps it was a combination of all these things, a complex and multifaceted truth that only she truly understood. But I believe that the greatest secret she held was the secret of her own worth, the knowledge that she was a valuable and important person, deserving of love, respect, and happiness. It was a secret that she had to learn through trial and error, through heartbreak and triumph. It was a secret that she ultimately shared with the world, through her art, her actions, and her story. And now, my dears, that secret is yours to keep. Carry it with you, cherish it, and share it with others. Let it be a reminder that you too are worthy of love, respect, and happiness. Let it be a source of strength and inspiration in your own life. Aurora's story may be over, but her legacy lives on, in the hearts of those who knew her, in the pages of her diary, and in the stories that we continue to tell about her. And now it lives on in you. Remember her courage, her love, her resilience. Remember the lessons she taught us, the values she embodied, the spirit she shared. And remember that you too have the power to make a difference, to leave a positive impact on the world, to create a legacy of your own. Thank you for listening, my dears. Thank you for sharing this journey with me. And thank you, Grandma Aurora, for sharing your story with us all. May your memory be a blessing, and may your legacy continue to inspire us for generations to come. Now go forth and live your own extraordinary lives, filled with courage, love, and resilience. And never ever forget the power of a good story. Until we meet again, keep those stories alive.